Welcome to Newsmax TV. I'm Kathleen Walter. Joining us now is Dutch Member of Parliament Geert Wilders. He is the founder and leader of the Party for Freedom, the third largest political party in the Netherlands. Mr. Wilders is an outspoken opponent of Islam, has campaigned to stop the Islamization of the Netherlands, and has worked to have the Quran banned in his home country. Mr. Wilders is the author of the brand new book, Marked for Death, Islam's War Against the West and Me. And Mr. Wilders, thank you so much for being with us here on Newsmax TV today.
Well, thank you, Kathleen. It's a pleasure to be on your show today.
Well, you say that you are living proof of the campaign to shut down an honest discussion about Islam and jihad. Talk to us about the campaign against you. You say that you've been marked for death, that you can't go anywhere without armed guards, and that you live in a secret government safe house?
Well, unfortunately, that's all very true, because I speak out and speak the truth about Islam. I have been marked for death. I have been banned from many countries throughout the world. I have been taken to court in my own country, both the criminal court and the civil court. And I'm not the only one. Anybody who dare to speak out against this ideology called Islam will pay a heavy price. I lived with my wife for 6 months in prison cells for security reasons. We didn't commit any crime. We lived in army barracks and safe houses. And I always say, if I spoke out, which I'm not planning to do, but just for argument's sake, if I spoke out against Christianity, all those things would not have happened. We use, as is the first chapter of my book, we use the pen, and unfortunately they use the axe.
Now, why is it so important to you to remain so steadfast in speaking out?
Well, I believe, Kathleen, that Islam, at the end of the day, will cost us our freedom of speech. I believe that freedom of speech is so important that we really should unmask the true identity of Islam. And let me tell you that I have nothing against Muslims. I have nothing against people. I acknowledge the fact that the majority of the Muslims are law-abiding people. It would be ridiculous to even suggest that the majority of the Muslims are terrorists. They are not. But there is only one Islam, and this is the Islam of the Holy Book, the Quran, and the Islam of the Prophet Muhammad. And it's not so much a religion, it's an ideology. It's an ideology that should be compared with, not with Christianity or with Judaism, but with communism or with fascism. And let me give you one example. I give more in my book. That is that if you want to leave Islam, if you're an apostate, the penalty for that is death. You have to be killed. This is not the case with Christianity or with Judaism, but it was the case in Nazi Germany or in communist Russia. So we have to see Islam for what it is, because if we don't, we will lose our free Christian-based society.
Mr. Wilders, what effect has Islam had on your home country, and what progress do you think that you've made in the Dutch Parliament in raising awareness of your concerns?
Well, you know, Islam is unfortunately all over Europe, not alone my own country, but if you go to the United Kingdom, if you go to France, if you go to Germany, if you go to Sweden, you see the results of the Islamization. Crime has risen. We have honor killings. We have genital mutilation. We have forced weddings. A lot of Americans don't know, but even today in the United Kingdom, there are 60 Sharia courts active and acting today, where a statement of a woman is worth half of that of a man. So in my book, Marked for Death, I tell them that the American public, that Europe is in very bad shape today, and please don't think that what is happening to Europe today will not happen to America tomorrow. It will happen to America tomorrow unless you fight for freedom, you fight for your own identity, and you cut back in the Islamization of our societies.
Now, why did you decide to publish this book in America, and do you think that the United States is naive to the threat?
Well, I think there are a lot of misconceptions also in the United States about the true nature of Islam. In my book I describe President Obama, who a few years ago, as you know, went to the Al-Azhar University in Cairo, a very racist university. If you're Christian, if you're Christian Copt, you're not even allowed to study there. And President Obama said that he offered a pact between America and Islam. And I was shocked. I really thought, what is happening here? A pact between America as a country that is the beacon of freedom in the world and Islam. A pact between America and Islam is a pact between America and Sharia law. And this is what we should not have in our free societies. And I believe, Kathleen, that the biggest problem that we face in Europe and in America today is a disease called cultural relativism. Politicians, political correct intellectuals who fool the people by saying that all cultures are equal. And I am proud to say that it's not true. Our culture is based on Christianity, on Judaism, on humanism, and that culture is far superior and better than the culture of barbarism called Islam.
Now, President Obama this week made a surprise visit to Afghanistan in which he said that a time of war was ending and that the defeat of al-Qaeda is within our reach. What is your analysis of President Obama's handling of the war on terror and more specifically radical Islam?
Well, once again, I'm not here, I should be modest, to criticize your president. You choose your own leaders and I choose our own leaders. But let me tell you one thing. When it comes to Afghanistan or when it comes to the so-called Arab Spring, in reality it's an Arab winter in the whole of the Middle East. I support the people who long for freedom. Anybody should. The Arabs should have their freedom. But my point is that as long as the Islamic ideology, and you know Islam means submission, Islam wants to submit and subjugate us all. As long as the Islamic ideology keeps dominant in any country in the world, let alone the Middle East, there will be no freedom at the end of the day. And this is how I believe we should look at it, both in our own countries as in the Middle East. I believe we should have no relations, or at least less relations, with countries from the Organization of Islamic Conference, who made, as you know, this Cairo Declaration of Human Rights, which states that all human rights are limited to Sharia law, which means that women, that Kafirs, that Christians will have the worst deal ever. So I believe it's a token of strength to diminish the relations rather than talking to terrorists like the Taliban or other terrorist groups in the Middle East.
What do you make of reports that President Obama has asked Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to hold off on striking Iran until after the 2012 presidential election?
Well, of course, I don't know what President Obama's agenda really is, but I know one thing. I know that we should all support the state of Israel. Israel, Kathleen, is fighting our fight. Israel is exactly on the border of jihad and reason. Israel is a beacon of light, a canary in the coal mine, so to say, in an area of darkness and tyranny. And I believe that parents in America and in Europe can sleep easily at night because Israeli parents lay awake at night worrying about their children defending our borders. The border of jihad is our border. We share the same cultural values as Israel does. And let me tell you, if Jerusalem falls, Athens will fall, Amsterdam will fall, and America will fall as well. They are fighting our fight. So I believe we should do anything possible to support the state of Israel, certainly against this barbaric regime of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Okay, in addition, what should the U.S. and the Netherlands do to address the threat of a nuclear Iran?
Well, I believe we should be tough. I have visited Iran before I was marked for death, before I got death threats, and I was not allowed to enter countries anymore because I spoke out against Islam. I visited Iran many times. I was there 3 times before the elections. And I spoke to many ordinary people, journalists, women organizations. And I know one thing, that the weakest point of Iran is its economy. You know that almost 80% of the Iranians are under the age of 23. And they all want to have a job. They all want to work. So if we really want to have a real change, if not military, I'm not excluding military actions either, but if not military, we should have the most tough isolations and sanctions against Iran in an economical way, both when it comes to isolation of their banking and their economy, when it comes to investments in Iran. We should cut it off totally in the whole economical world, because that will be the only way when Iranians themselves stand up against this barbaric Islamo-fascist regime of Mr. Ahmadinejad and the Supreme Leader Khamenei. This will hurt them, and this is what we should do.
Mr. Wilders, last question for you. How do the Dutch view President Obama?
Well, I believe Mr. Obama, President Obama, is very popular throughout Europe and also in my own country, the Netherlands. I myself, as you might have seen, am a little bit more skeptical. I believe he has very much misconception in his foreign policy and certainly towards Islam. But, well, you will have elections as we do actually later this year, and I'm sure that the American public will choose the best president that they deserve. That's not up to me, but up to you to decide who will lead you in the next 4 years.
All right. Again, the book is Marked for Death, Islam's War Against the West and Me, available on Amazon.com and in bookstores everywhere. And Mr. Wilders, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be on your show. Thank you so much.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.